Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I have another video for you guys. Another explaining video from Swagkage. This one explaining the Tsukuyomi, another ability that I think is incredibly awesome. It's such an amazing ability, and it honestly, when you really think about the Tsukuyomi, it does kind of make sense why Kishimoto only gave it to one person, because it is pretty it is pretty insane when you really think about it. But let's just go ahead and listen to what Swag has to say. And if you have any questions about the Tsukuyomi and how it works, I'm hoping this video will actually be able to explain it to you.
Yo, what's going on everybody? Swagkage here, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about the highly requested Tsukuyomi, one of the most powerful genjutsu in the entire series, and one of the Mangekyo Sharingan abilities of Itachi Uchiha. Now, despite the fact that I've gotten a lot of requests to cover Tsukuyomi in the past, the manga and anime actually do quite a good job explaining how this jutsu works on their own. Now, one thing that the manga does not directly state, as evidenced by the mass confusion about this ability, is that Tsukuyomi is not a jutsu that all Uchiha with the Mangekyo Sharingan have access to. A whole lot of people, as I have touched on in previous videos, seem to think that this is an ability that Sasuke possesses, that Madara possesses, that Obito and Kakashi possess, and no, Tsukuyomi can only be used by Itachi. As you can clearly see here, Madara and Sasuke have both used generic Sharingan genjutsu in the past, and not Tsukuyomi, and plus the manga does make it pretty evident that each person's Mangekyo Sharingan has access to completely different abilities. There are some rare exceptions, of course, like both Sasuke and Itachi being able to use Amaterasu, but it's pretty strongly implied that Sasuke's other ability is Enton Kagetsuchi, which allows him to...
This is interesting, because look, I mentioned in a previous video how in the Boruto era there's a big plot hole that I'm actually surprised a lot of people don't mention, but in the Boruto era we see Sasuke casting Amaterasu with his right eye, even though that's not technically how it works. Sasuke can cast Amaterasu with his left eye. You can even plainly see it here, and you even see it multiple times later on in the series, in the Naruto manga, not Boruto. But again, yeah, for some reason in the Boruto era, Sasuke's out there casting Amaterasu with his right eye, which makes no goddamn sense, because that's not how it works. It's his left eye that can cast Amaterasu. His right eye allows him to control the Amaterasu flames. It gives him flame control. That's how it works. And yet for some reason he's casting Amaterasu with his right eye, even though that's not how it works. So just wanted to point that out. But again, yeah, evidence to prove that what I said was absolutely correct.
To control and shape Amaterasu's flames. So yeah, we can safely dismiss the idea that anybody aside from Itachi that we know of can use Tsukuyomi. That's an absolute negative, 100%. Anyway, now that that's been cleared up, let's move on. Like many of the techniques exclusive to the Sharingan, Tsukuyomi's name draws from ancient Japanese folklore. Though its name translates to Moon Reader in English, it actually draws from the Shinto god of the moon, who is also named Tsukuyomi. Some people also consider Tsukuyomi to be the god of time, which ties in quite nicely with this jutsu's mechanics. Now, as for the mechanics themselves, they're pretty simple actually. Since Tsukuyomi is a power tied to the Mangekyo Sharingan, it is an ocular genjutsu, and as a result, it requires eye contact with a target to be...
One thing that I just want to say, sorry to keep pausing, but I don't want to talk over the video, but one thing that I do want to say is I do like it whenever authors, like, they create these worlds, worlds that are completely different from our own, and have certain things, or in this case, certain abilities that are tied to mythology that exists in our world. Like, I've always loved it whenever readers do this. Like, they take inspiration from other pieces of literature and use it to craft their own world. I mean, we've seen it multiple times. Like, for example, and this isn't exactly the same, but it does sort of connect. But for example, look at what George Lucas did with Star Wars. Lucas took inspiration from multiple other sources of media, like Flash Gordon and Akira Kurosawa films, and he used it to craft his own world. But you can even see some of the inspirations there when you actually, if you've watched any of Akira Kurosawa's films and then you watch Star Wars, you can clearly see the inspiration there. And I've always loved it whenever authors do this. It goes to show you that a lot more work went into this than you might have originally thought. And I just thought that was absolutely really cool for Kishimoto to do.
Be performed. Itachi cannot initiate Tsukuyomi by just pointing his finger at people like he can with many of his other genjutsu, though that's not a very difficult activation condition to fulfill, especially in cases where the person Itachi is fighting does not know about his ability to use Tsukuyomi. Now, after Itachi lands Tsukuyomi, I mean, it's pretty much fucking confirmed game over, dude. There's practically no way for a person to break out of Tsukuyomi, and while I can hear a bunch of you typing already,
But Swagkage, Sasuke broke out of Tsukuyomi in his battle with Itachi.
that was because Itachi let him, pure and
Yes.
simple. Now, there are
Yeah,
a
yeah,
few
a lot of
counters to
people-
Tsukuyomi present in the Naruto.
A lot of people completely misunderstand what happened in that fight. No, Sasuke did not break out of Tsukuyomi on his own. Itachi led him. Remember, Itachi was controlling that entire fight, which honestly kind of makes Itachi a lot more cool. But although one thing that I do kind of not like about the fight, about that fight, is that it does kind of diminish Sasuke's accomplishments in the Shippuden part of the series, or part 2 of the manga.
Naruto world that I'll explain in a bit, but assuming a person doesn't have access to any of these, I mean, rest in peace, dude. Like I said at the beginning of the video, Tsukuyomi is one of the most powerful genjutsu in the entire Naruto world. As a matter of fact, the only two directly stated to be stronger than it are Kodo Amatsukami and the Infinite Tsukuyomi, with Izanami being a debatable third one. While a person is under this jutsu's effects, Itachi is able to place them under an illusion entirely of his own creation. And while there are numerous genjutsu that can be broken out of simply by the target's awareness that they are under the effects of one, Tsukuyomi is not one of these. Most of the time, targets under Tsukuyomi's influence are well aware that they are under the effects of a genjutsu, but they simply can't do anything about it. Itachi's goal when affecting them with this jutsu is generally not to trick them, but instead to afflict them with so much psychological trauma that it physically damages them. Now, what makes Tsukuyomi in particular so powerful is that not only does Itachi have complete control over his target's perception of space, like many genjutsu users do, but additionally, he has total control over their perception of time as well. And this means that while a person may only actually be under the effects of the genjutsu for a few seconds in real time, they themselves may feel as if multiple days or even multiple years in some cases have passed. For example, when Itachi first used the jutsu on Kakashi in part 1, he made Kakashi feel as though he was trapped inside of a place called the Nightmare Realm for 72 hours, and furthermore, he was able to make it seem as though he was under complete control over how long it took for these 72 hours to pass. While in the Nightmare Realm, Kakashi was continuously stabbed by dozens of sword-wielding copies of Itachi at once for all 72 of these hours, and as you can probably guess for yourself, the psychological trauma was enough to cause Kakashi to collapse and placed him in a coma that only Tsunade could force him out of. During the Uchiha clan massacre,
insane.
Itachi also used Tsukuyomi to place a girl who was in love with him named Izumi Uchiha under a genjutsu where she and Itachi and
Itachi focused his thoughts on his own genjutsu. Tsukuyomi allowed him to completely control time, space, and matter. It was a power that he gained when he activated the Mangekyo Sharingan. The time that passed within his genjutsu was 1/100th of 1/1000th of 1/1,000,000th of that of the real world. That is freaking insane. That's insane that he could do that. And I remember hearing about this, that he basically made her live out sort of her entire life in her mind. And in the real world, barely a moment passed, or not even a whole moment. Like they said, 1/1000th of 1/1,000,000th of a second in the real world. All of that, and it's insane. It is absolutely insane. That just goes to show you how insanely overpowered this ability is, and kind of a good thing that Kishimoto only gave it to one person.
ended up getting
Because
married.
imagine an entire clan having access to this ability, it would be insane.
And she lived out the entire rest of her life in, well, the amount of time is written a bit
Also, just out of curiosity, if anyone knows where I can buy this light novel, let me know in the comments.
strangely in the novel, but it is stated to be 1/100th of 1/1000th of 1/1,000,000th of a second, or in other words, 1/100 billionth of a second. 10 picoseconds. It's a really short amount of time. 10 picoseconds is how long it would take for light to travel about 3 millimeters. Now, I'm not even gonna bother getting into how ridiculous of a feat that is, but anyway, perceiving such a large amount of
leave that
events
to the
and
power
such a
scalers.
lengthy period of time
Maybe
in
Seth
a
will make
pretty
a video about it. And if he
microscopic
did,
amount of
we'll
time
watch it.
was enough to kill Izumi, which means that it's possible to use Tsukuyomi to kill people too. Like I said, if Itachi catches somebody with this jutsu, it's GG immediately. Now, I did mention earlier that there are a few hard counters to Tsukuyomi present in the world of Naruto, but I may have overstated that because because there are only 2, and they're only available to people with pretty high tier abilities to begin with. The first was demonstrated by Kabuto after he'd attained Sage Mode, and in order to avoid being caught by Tsukuyomi, he just completely cut off his eyesight. He just made it to where he couldn't see at all. And now this is an option that most people don't have access to because of the fact that, well, most people don't have Sage Mode and need their eyes to see their surroundings. But I guess it is always possible to just avoid looking into Itachi's eyes. The only other stated method to counter Tsukuyomi is for a person to activate their Mangekyo Sharingan when Itachi attempts to cast it, but of course, this is only available to people with a Mangekyo Sharingan. And since Itachi killed pretty much any potential Mangekyo Sharingan users when he wiped out the Uchiha clan, that's not much of an issue for him. And now some of you may be wondering, well, what about perfect Jinchuriki? Can't they break out of Nope. Naruto flat out tells B, hey man, you don't want to get caught in Itachi's genjutsu. If so, it's game over. Don't look into his eyes. Pretty concrete evidence right there. One Jinchuriki to another. What does pose a much more real threat to Itachi than the potential counters to Tsukuyomi is the immense amount of chakra it requires, and the fact that it deteriorates his vision just like all Mangekyo Sharingan abilities do. The amount of chakra that Tsukuyomi requires seems to be consistent regardless of the complexity of the illusion, as Itachi lost quite a bit of chakra even after trapping Sasuke in a pretty standard genjutsu with the use of Tsukuyomi. But generally the reason it takes up so much chakra is because of the potential that Itachi has to create some of the most complex illusions in pretty much like the whole world. I don't know too many other people who can cause somebody to live out the entirety of their life in 10 picoseconds. So, you know, that probably explains the huge chakra cost. And then, of course, the progressive blindness, that's self-explanatory. The more Itachi uses this jutsu, the more and more it will degrade his vision. Anyway, that about does it for this Tsukuyomi video. Thank you to everybody who requested that I covered this topic, because I like Tsukuyomi. I think it's a pretty fun genjutsu. Yeah, probably my favorite, in all honesty. But anyway, that's beside the point. Thank you guys for watching the video all the way to the end. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button to get updates when I post new content, and maybe consider leaving a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave any ideas you have for future videos in the comments below, and until my next video, I'll talk to you later. Swagkage out. Bye.
Okay, so that was the Tsukuyomi, and yeah, it's pretty much like he said, it is an insanely broken ability, and like I said, probably a good thing that only one person had access to it. And you know, if you think about it, Tsukuyomi, and this is another thing that I like what authors do sometimes, is when they give their characters abilities, but you know, it's not just to give their characters abilities, but sometimes the abilities will match their personalities and what they can do. For example, Tsukuyomi, if you think about it, does fit Itachi's character perfectly, because he spent his entire life painting this illusion about himself, not just to the world, but also to probably the person he cared about the most, that being his little brother Itachi. So him having an ability that allows him to create like this completely perfect illusion in a person's mind is, again, if you think about it, it really is perfect for him. And with that being said, that's going to be the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, thank you so much. I really appreciate you watching this all the way to the end. If you have your own videos, again, if you have your own suggestions, just let me know about them in the comment section down below, and I'll get to them. I really, really appreciate every single ounce of support you've thrown my way, whether it's watching my videos, subscribing, or sharing my videos out there, or commenting, just engaging in the discussions that we have in the comments. I can't thank you guys enough, and I hope you join me for the next video. Bye for now.